Back with another episode of Rethink Real Estate, and I feel a little bit dirty today because I'm cheating on Chris, essentially. However, is that we've got another marketing magician that's going to be joining us today, Kumar. Avi runs KUWARE, which is Science of Marketing. Now, we talk about a little bit of the equation of marketing that he's sort of founded on, and I really enjoyed the conversation with Avi about how he brings a business coaching philosophy into marketing in its own right. He actually was kind enough to go through and look at all the other episodes that Chris has actually done as well, and talks a little bit more about the audience side of things and creating lists and using ads to get data. And it's really complementary to the way that, Chris has already sort of taken us through as an audience and understood the marketing side of things. A great conversation, somebody that's got a great deal of depth in the startup world and in the world of, building pretty large marketing philosophies for businesses that therefore we can sort of use as a parallel within the real estate space. Hope you enjoy. Welcome to Rethink Real Estate. My name is Ben Brady, and this is a real estate podcast aimed to deliver sales strategies, marketing tips, and business insights from industry experts and myself to build a listing-focused business for the future. Let's get into it. Avi, welcome to Rethink Real Estate.
Thank you, Ben. Glad to be here.
I just jumped at the opportunity when it comes down to the marketing side of the business to have somebody else come in and give their thoughts. Avi, you've been kind enough to go back and sort of look through what Chris has been saying on the podcast to sort of follow through on that. Chris is obviously our in-house marketing magician, as I call him. And certainly, he sheds a few lights on it, but I think that it's always important to get external sources to critique what we're doing, to shed some light on maybe some further things that they understand. And ultimately where I wanted to start off before we delve into sort of, talking about different avenues and different ways and furthering on Chris's stuff, I wanted to talk a little bit more about your company, KUWARE. Science of Marketing is the slogan of the company, and marketing is such a interesting term. Just wanted to get some background from you so that the audience knows what they're getting from the beginning.
Certainly. So KUWARE has been around for 16 years. We have been deep in e-commerce in the beginning when we started. Then we got into a lot of startups, well-funded startups who wanted to get their products out. Then we evolved then we were doing a lot of fractional CMO model for companies. Last few years, 4 or 5 years or so, we have gotten into much more of a local marketing, if you will. And realtors fall into that category, that you want to market within your area more so than nationally. So we got into that, and then we do multiple segments in there of so we have a separate segment for plumbing and other businesses like that, but realtor is one of them. So that's where we have gotten deep into. Also, other little bit of tidbit. 3 years back, I acquired a company called Invisible PPC, which is a white label agency which does ads on behalf of other things. And that has been a very interesting experience, because I can bring to light, beyond directly working with customers, working with multiple, really hundreds of agencies, and what can be done even in the realtor market and otherwise, what other agencies are trying to do. They're asking us to do the ads on their behalf, but what they're asking was interesting to see. Like, even though we work directly with end customers, but we also have agency which works with other agencies, if you will. And that's a high volume business. So we kind of gather a lot of data there.
Well, having that level of insight is probably one of the more strategic areas that you can focus on and actually shed some really good light on. I just, one of the things I wouldn't mind starting off, if that's okay, Avi, I'm sort of just going against the grain a little bit. There's something that you sent through to me before we sort of jumped on the podcast today, which was the 6 equations of science of marketing. And I wouldn't mind just going through a little bit of that philosophy, if that's okay with you in the beginning.
Yeah, certainly. No problem at all. So first, I want to preface this. Those were designed for, if you will, primarily for startups and others who had to keep their budget in mind. But that still applies very well. Anybody who has money is an issue, right? So the idea, instead of breaking down the equation, I'll break down the concept. Probably it'll be easier to grasp. So the concept is this, that end of the day, marketing exists to enhance your business. So first thing you need to know is figure out what is your margin of your business. So you figure out what is your net margin. Then once you know what is your profitability, then even if you are a very growth oriented company or a startup or a business, do not spend more than 80% of that on marketing.
Hmm.
If you're very growth oriented, if you're average company, you can spend 20 to 40% of that. The 80% is basically there'll be errors in marketing. So you will at least break even. If you're growth oriented, if you put all your net margin in marketing, you will grow, right?
Hmm.
So that's those are the equations. That's how they work out. And the big part of that is it's net margin. You should calculate all in, which means if you're hiring a marketing agency who are charging for management, if you're doing ads, everything should be included in, because this is one common fallacy which is done by, when you talk about ROAS, return on ad spend, it's little misleading because you're just looking at the ads. What about the management fees that other companies charging you? They don't put it
Yeah.
in part of the ads, right?
Yeah.
So our approach is bring all in, total marketing spend, ad spend, and then see, do you have a return? Do you have a ROI? That's really what we're going after. So that's the mathematical part of the equations that always work with the net margin and never go more than 80% if you're very growth oriented, but otherwise just 40% of net margin is fine. The other subjective parts of equation, if you will, even though the equations and subjective, I don't know, they kind of don't go together probably. But the idea is that you need strategy and you need execution, and they both needs to be there. And then initially it seems like, yeah, everybody knows that, it's fine. But I go to the next level by saying it is the execution is so important part of it that if you don't have any strategy, just execute.
Mhm.
And the example I like to use is that if you are on a soccer field, you don't have a big plan. If you just kick the ball enough in the right direction, you might get a goal. But if you just sit and plan, doesn't matter how good is a plan.
Mhm.
It's never going to happen. So, but of course, if you plan and then play the game, you're better off, right? So combination is better, but if you have to choose more towards execution. And that's where I set the equations up that, hey, it's very, very important. Of course, the
Yeah.
third part is of all this is that you can have strategy and execution. If you don't have a good product or service, you don't have a business, right? So again, it was built for startups, but it can apply to any place that,
Anything.
I mean, I'll take it to, like, I'll prove it by saying it applies to realtors. Hey, if you are not good in servicing your clients, if you don't know what you're doing, doesn't matter what you do with the marketing, eventually you will lose
Yeah.
because you'll not be able to retain them. So get that right. And we kind of assume that, right? Usually when you're looking at the business, that I know that part, I can fulfill the service. I have a good offer. I'm better than the other agents. I'm going to work a little harder. Once that is given, now let's do about strategy and marketing. So that was the idea of equations. First, do not spend more than what you're making basically in profit, to simplify it. And other one is look at the strategy and then execution together and your service. That has to be combined. So that's how we approached all the startups, and that worked well for us because the investors like the fact we are looking out for their money and we're always trying to give positive ROI, and that served us very well.
I think, well, thank you for going through that, because I think that there's a part of this, like from a parallel perspective with a startup and a real estate business, there's a low barrier to entry for an individual independent contractor to start up their own real estate business, essentially as an agent.
Mhm.
And they have to keep cost in mind. But so much of the time I see a lot of agents come into the business and they just go, well, here's what I'm going to designate my spend to marketing. No real plan, no real thoughts around ROI, no real thoughts around, what am I trying to generate, or how much revenue am I trying to generate out of the spend that ultimately I'm going to go with. So I can really appreciate your philosophy of basically it's more so business coaching with a marketing edge that you're sort of providing. And I really enjoy that. But I think that the angle of all of this that I really appreciated, Avi, that you coming into the podcast with, is that you've taken the time to sort of go through and sort of get an understanding of what Chris's philosophy on marketing is and some of the ad side of the business. And when you say ads, we're talking about the online portion of things. Is that right?
That's absolutely right. Yes,
Right.
yes.
And I guess that Chris has gone through over many episodes some of the restrictions from a targeting perspective that we are facing now as just like anything, like there was like door knocking was a solicitation back in the day, and now there's a do not knock register. Cold
Uh-huh.
calling was a solicitation, still is, and there's a do not call register. There's these things that come into place from a privacy perspective that are always going to be the changing landscape that we're after. You've got an understanding of, well, what do we do next now that the things have changed? What is our strategy now?
Yes. So I like to approach it, especially Meta is Facebook. Meta is the one of the choice platform for
Mm-hmm.
real estate advertising, and rightly so. So if we kind of look at that, when iOS 14 happened, Meta changed drastically because at that point iPhone was not allowing tracking. So even before the restriction came in, there were things which were not working normally.
Mm-hmm.
Like your lookalike audience, their ability to track off platform was going away. And we started noticing, and we were doing with some clients $500,000 on e-commerce per month ad spend. So there it's like things become very obvious very quickly when you cannot track something. So what we started noticing is that because you cannot track and there are these limitations happening, so what do we do? And any kind of a audience asking Facebook to say, hey, give me a lookalike, give me this kind of a demographic thing was just not working very well and has not worked very well for a while. So this problem was already happening, that how do you target, right? Now they could still do and still works, as Chris pointed out, with all the restrictions. You can still go at the city level, right? That was basically the level you can do now and choose and say, I want to target that. But if you're doing that, and the other thing which he rightly pointed out, custom list, your own list, upload your list, right? And so there, the challenge is how you build the list.
Yes.
So I want to address
How much time it takes as well. Yeah.
correct, exactly. So that is what I want to take some time, because how do you do that? Like the idea of like open house, but it's a very labor intensive, slow process. And we are talking about getting 1,000, right? And in fact, he pointed out that at I think it was Realtor Max, there is 36,000. I want to say, hey, as independent contractor, without open houses, I want to give you a way to get to 5 or 10,000. Okay, without open houses,
Awesome.
right? And with the same system, everything Chris said is true within that framework. He kind of mentioned it in the first one, generally when he was talking about it, but he never got into specifics. So I want to. So let's look at the problem. Define the problem is simple. Custom lists work, right? You have your own audience. You're the right people. They are in the market. So that's the list you want to go after. You want
Yep.
to build a list, right? And then other one is, hey, I can just target city,
Yep.
and I cannot go lower. What can I do? If you look at this whole problem, this is almost a problem going to 1930s or 40s with no digital marketing. You got to put an ad in a newspaper. And if you put an ad in a newspaper, it goes, best you can do is you can pick a higher end newspaper like Wall Street Journal versus your local Globe or whatever, your local Tribune. But that's about it. But you cannot choose your audience.
Mm-hmm.
So this problem has existed before digital marketing kind of spoiled us all being able to target better.
Yes.
And how was that solved? So if you go and read Ogilvy and others, the thing is the copy. You can do the copy in such a way, and even current platforms allow you kind of get few seconds free in the beginning. So if you do the copy right, which means if your ad is right, you can get the right people to raise your hand.
Is that
So
because of keywords? Like why is
yeah,
that?
so it's and people, and the one of the things which in copy, the one most common mistake people do when they do a video or anything is try to be clever. So clever is because everybody's like, you're writing a copy and you want to impress.
Yeah.
And I have a very specific example. I tested this many years back, and not tested this. I thought I was so clever. I have daughters, and my daughter, my kids have a habit of giving me books to read as they were growing up. So as she was growing up, she was reading Jane Austen. So she forced me, oh, you got to read Jane Austen. Okay, I'm reading Jane Austen. So in the most famous book from Jane Austen, Pride and Prejudice, the line is, I'm going to paraphrase, I don't know exactly, but it's something to the effect that it's a well-known fact that any gentleman with a in position of a fortune must be looking for a wife. It's something to this effect, right? And so I said, man, that's clever. So I'm going to take this. I took that line. I said, it's a well-known fact that anybody with a good widget or idea, with a good business idea, must be in lookout for marketing. Again, I'm paraphrasing. I had better line than that because we copyrighted and all. And I thought it's so clever. All the people will see, oh yeah, he just what he did with the first line, right? It completely fell flat on Facebook. Why?
Okay.
Because how many people know Jane Austen and that line? It's very, very clever. And when we put Jane Austen in the background and everything, right? The book Pride and Prejudice and everything. But I'm just being too clever.
Yep.
And it's like I impressed myself basically, right?
Yeah.
At that
Yeah.
point.
Yeah.
So,
Fair enough. Yeah. You're patting you're like, oh, well done, Avi. Well
yeah.
done. Yeah.
So that's the common problem in right topic. So now getting in practically, what does it mean? It's completely okay to start your with ad. Are you in market for you? Are you in Austin market looking for a house? I can help you. Start with that line. In Austin market, looking for want to sell in Austin market, start with that line.
Yeah.
If you start with that and then say, here are the 5 things you should consider. If you do that, who you think will watch that? It'll be the person who's interested. So any kind of ad, you want this report, monthly report, which I have for the Austin market, whatever you're giving away, right? That's next. Whatever offer you have. And of course, the other thing is don't try to make it sticky. Just come to my meeting and talk to me and register with me. Instead, just give them something, right? Some report, which are easy.
Yep.
If you do just a copy like that, video views on Facebook are a couple of cents in US in general. Doesn't matter. You can do a lousiest video in the world. For a couple of cents, you can get views, half view or a quarter view of a video, of any kind of video on Facebook. If you just say, again, I'm going to stick with Austin. I'm in Austin, Texas. So Austin market, you play this in Austin market, the video, and you just watch for all the, and you're basically giving something away. Few people will watch it. Others will actually sign up for your, whatever you're giving away. That sign up, even if they don't sign up, let's assume that 1% signs up.
Yep.
Right? For a couple of cents, you got, for a couple of cents multiplied by 1%, for a couple of dollars, you got some people's email addresses. Now, ones who watched, you can do a direct ad for them by saying, I'm doing a free webinar or I'm doing this, come to it. Right? So Chris mentioned that, like, hey, it's your, once somebody has watched your video or website, he did talk about that. So you basically make them watch, make them raise their hand by watching that they are interested. And then you go right after them and do the simple image ad saying, I'm doing this webinar and this thing. Conversion rate usually for these things can be up to 10%.
Mm-hmm.
So even if you do that, 2 cents, 10 cents, so it's for like 20 cents a piece, effectively, you're getting people signing up. And so it doesn't take too much for a few $100s, or if you have $1,000, you building a huge list of people who are interested in the market.
Right? And I think that that's, I think that I think that the simplicity of that will catch a lot of people off guard because, Avi, you're used to dealing with some, very well funded, as you mentioned, startup companies, and ultimately they're accountable to the strategy that you're putting in place. And it's one of those things where you do see people put this incredible volume of effort into their videos, incredible volume of thought, where you look at it and sometimes it just falls short or it doesn't make sense, or you look at it and it's like, oh, that they're trying too hard almost. And in essence is that what we're trying to do is that I'm a massive believer in data. Data is something we talk about all the time because at the end of the day, it's the security element of creating your own audience, as you've already said, in order to then nurture that audience, in order to then have active communication, because it's so hard to get people's information at this point. So if you geared all of your ads towards that, where I think that most people, if you were doing a consultation with somebody, Avi, I'm assuming that they would be saying, well, how do I actually get a customer? Right? Mm-hmm. Instead of saying, how do I just get somebody's information to then give me an opportunity to stay in touch with them for a longer period of time and earn the right to become their real estate agent or their realtor, is that you're providing that solution, when I think too many people are trying to think, Facebook or these ads haven't produced any deals for me. No, they probably won't for years, months, whatever time frame you want. It's that, how do you... And I guess, how do you talk to people about, hey, you need to give, let me rephrase. Let's say that somebody comes to you today and they need help from a localized perspective. And they say, Avi, I want you to create me a plan And I'm going to look at this from a long-term perspective that, again, I want to build a list of people, but also I obviously want to start seeing results out of that list. Okay. How long do you say that they need to be committed to this strategy for?
So it's what they should do is, so here's the example that I want to build a list and I'm committed, but I want to sell houses also right now, for example, right? If that's the case. And also I want people to send me listings right now also while I'm building the list. So if you start the strategy of whatever you're giving away free and you're running that video and, like put it on $1 a day if necessary to get it going, right? Because you know, and if you have a little bit more budget, put $10 a day, and that'll get you very far quickly. So as it is running, within a week, you would have had a lot of people viewing it. In parallel, you start ads for even that house now. Because who are the people who your especially if your first video was, hey, if you're in the market looking for a house, these are the 5 things you really need to know. Download this report right now. These are the people who are looking for a house, right? Yeah. So you start running ads to that audience right after next week.
Yep.
Right? So it's not only you're collecting and getting them in a newsletter and nurturing, and hopefully that you should do for sure. But you should start running ads to them also at the same time.
Right.
Right. And so you're building, so you basically you have a top of the funnel and things are coming through and you're running ad to them. Right. And instead of just the whole audience. Now, there is some value if you are, we have done, I don't know if enough people do this, but by the way, I have a history with real estate that we used to build those microsites for expensive houses.
Got it.
That was one of the things we offered, right? And some people still do that and other do that. And it was kind of one of the, hey, as a realtor, I'm going to build a site. That was a good selling point, so we came up with a system to quickly build quick sites. So, and so all those ways of advertising, end of the day, you need audience going to it, correct? And this is the audience. So I'm saying is this top of the funnel becomes the audience you send them. So you show the ads only to those. When you show the ads to a limited audience, ads are relatively very cheap. Right? Because it's that audience only, and your conversion rate is very, very high.
Right. Because you've curated that list then. Like, correct. So when you're saying like down the funnel, like from a visual perspective in my head, it's like get them to engage. And once they have engaged, then it's not stopping the ads at that point. You have it like it's actually then targeting with more relevant information, then even more relevant information. It's having that communication plan or that progressive plan to further develop that relationship, so to speak.
Correct. Absolutely. So basically the top of the funnel is another thing we have found is videos are better engagement at top of the funnel.
Okay.
Once they have heard from you, you can get away with the image ad easily, right? Because they've already seen something. So they kind of have a little bit of a memory there. They've touched either through email or something. Then images work completely fine. But top of the funnel, images don't work very well, right? Unless you're trying to do page likes. Page like is one thing. People have a tendency, if we have done like an image of an iceberg, beautiful image, nothing to do with marketing. People are just liking it away to like the page without realizing they're liking the page without liking the image. So you can do that kind of stuff, right, with images for like. But for actual action, video in general works better. And then the bottom of the funnel. So basically the idea is you're building the top of the funnel for people who are interested in this. And once they're interested, you're running in parallel. Because you're building that audience and Facebook allows you to keep adding to the audience based on the views. And this audience, you're running ads to them, which are now people who are interested, right? And it keeps building. I mean, first few weeks, it'll be lower. After 2-3 months, your audience is building huge. Right. And then if you keep running this forever, once you figure out, if you go back to the equations, once it is profitable, you cut it off by saying, I want only the last 90 days people. Right? So you can set this on autopilot that I want 90 days or less of people who watch my videos in the last 90 days. Because the people after they might have bought the house or sold the house, you don't want to talk to them anymore. And so you set that up that way, and you want to cut that off after a while. Initially, you want to warm up. Once you have a big enough list, start cutting it off. And just do that. And you can run this almost forever. So that would be my advice, right? And it is not a like, oh, wait and see. You should be seeing results. Initially in the weeks, you should see, oh, I've got an email addresses now already within weeks. Oh, within months, there are some people interested. Within a month or second month, you should see this. it should be that fast. Otherwise, there's something wrong in your funnel,
Yeah,
basically. And after 4 or 5 months, you should have a stable stream of everything running very well for you.
I think the interesting part, you said a word just there before, you can run this forever. It's amazing that, usually when someone puts a plan in place, when it's reinvesting in their business or that initial investment, it's like, well, we're going to do this for this time to get some results going, and then we'll just use the momentum to keep going. The reality is that this is like, marketing is an ongoing thing. It's a living, breathing organism within your business that needs to continue to be fed in order for your business to grow. It's not that you get to a point and then your business stays at that point. It's something that needs to continue to generate at all points. And that's where you speak about the science of all of this, or the equation, so to speak, of that, if you're generating X revenue, you then need to get to a point where understanding your net, that then reinvest X amount of percentage based on how much you do want to grow. It's that formula that I think that more often than not, most people just use a feel like, oh, I've got lots on, I don't need to market. Okay. Versus that future outlook of, well, hang on a second. That's probably why there's the inconsistencies within real estate, the ups and downs, the peaks and troughs, because we don't, as an industry, we don't keep things going for a long period of time. We don't have those progressions, as you mentioned. As someone comes through the funnel, we progressively target them with something else, or use ads to target them with something else. I think it's a really clear-cut way of thinking about future-proofing the business.
Yeah, and there are two caveats I want to point out. One is not one is a caveat. Other is a thing which you can use as a knob. So if you have ups and downs in your business, you're busy. You can actually turn down. Basically, the knob to turn is the budget.
Mm-hmm.
So that if things are really going great, you don't have much time, just reduce the budget, but don't stop it. Right. So that's this thing. The caveat is this: there is something called ad fatigue. So basically, you look for frequency. Once your frequency of that ad goes over 2, that means it's the same people seeing it again. Your conversion will drop.
Right.
So what you do is you should have multiple. Again, there also you do 3 creatives. Every few months you can bring back the old one.
Yeah.
Ad fatigue, as turns out, people just forget. You can use the same ad, even the same people, and the way Meta will show it to different people, you can just reuse again.
Yep.
After, as long as it's still relevant. If you're saying, hey, here's a May report, you'll have to probably change it to June report or something, right? If those kind of things you might have to change, but otherwise, so change the once the frequency goes over 2. Frequency is basically how often that video or ad was seen by average person who saw it. So that's a frequency number which Facebook gives you. So then do change then. And other is control the knobs of money you're spending, because there are 2 places you're spending money. One is the top of the funnel ads. Other is directly advertising for them for if a house you have or you want listing, whatever it is. Mm-hmm. Both the knobs you control based on where you are in your ability to serve more customers.
Yep, indeed. Well, again, I think that it's a really strategic approach. I love the mix of actually taking some business coaching as well as then the marketing side of it, to think about it in a more succinct and smart way versus just trying to paint the fence, so to speak, as loud as you possibly can to then get as many people as you can. I think that there's a strategic element that you can bring into this for people in their businesses in order to make sure that they look at it more strategic. They look at it as a department of their business, and they look at it from a coaching perspective as something that then can enhance their business, because it is. I think that word marketing is thrown around so often in all industries that it needs to be something that is top of mind awareness. So, Avi, thank you for joining us today. From that said, we'll have all of your information in the show notes, so that therefore our agents and the people that are listening can get in touch with you and sort of go through that philosophy with you further. But any closing notes, anything that we've missed today?
So only thing I want to say is the business part is so important. If you're working with a marketer, the line I like to use is, I want to know your business so much that I can compete with you. Otherwise, I don't want to do your marketing. and it's not like I have any intention to compete, but the idea is that if I don't get the business, there's no way I can market you, right? So I just want to emphasize that it's intentional, that you got to. So anybody you work with, whenever you work with, if they just throw marketing at you without asking questions about your business, probably not the right people to work with.
Yeah.
They need to really have interest in your business, basically.
I guess
so that's it. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. This was fun.
Absolutely. Well, again, we appreciate you jumping on to Rethink Real Estate, Avi, and look forward to connecting again very shortly. So about 75% of our audience hasn't liked, followed, or subscribed to our podcast. It would mean the world to us, and it would help this podcast more than you know to expand our reach if you were to like, follow, or subscribe on any of the platforms that you're watching or listening on. Thanks again.